Don, obviously, didn't get to play both of your games last week. I guess, how did you guys just kind of handle the disappointment of not getting to compete on Saturday?
Yeah, it was actually kind of really interesting on Saturday when we did find out was after we were done kind of with our morning routine activation, our film, walkthrough type of things, and then our players were at pregame. And I was working out when JD called, and so then walked back in and talked to them, about it. And I think, we knew it that before, we knew the day before that they had limited players, but then it was really kind of an interesting next 30 to 45 minutes as we believed the game wasn't going to be played, but still had to kind of wait for an official, word from the conference office that it wasn't going to be played. And so there was kind of an interesting bonding moment, with our team together in one room. And so I think we made a very positive situation kind of occur out of a very negative situation and got to spend some time together. So that's kind of how it went down. And then we had to figure out, certainly the dynamics, the getting back and setting up meals and all those kind of coordinating all those type of things. But now we wait and see. We still don't know what's going to transpire. If we're playing it, if we're not playing it, both of them have ramifications that are, certainly impact us a great deal.
Looking ahead to this week, got a couple games against, third and fourth place teams in the standings, starting off with Thursday against Kansas City there. What's just they played you guys pretty tough when you went down to their place. What challenges do they bring?
Well, I think they bring a lot of challenges. Certainly, UMKC is a team that can score fast. They can push in transition. They can, the kid with the ball in her hands really attacks the rim hard. They've got post kids that are rim runners. They space the floor with shooters. They're a very dynamic offensive group. They're really talented. With Naomi Alnadas, the McDavid kid, certainly Bradford, Bradley, Willems. They're all really, really talented kids. Make a lot of things happen for them. And I think what they do a really good job of is they finish plays at an extremely high level. So one, they can score it, they can do a lot of different things to put you in tough situations, but then they play really, really hard and they finish plays at a very high level too.
You have 4 seniors on the roster. Their last games getting to play here in Vermilion. What have you told them how to kind of just enjoy these two? What's the message been to them?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's really challenging right now because you have this kind of what if from last week yet. And so what you first have to do is kind of move into what do we know to be the case? Well, we know to be the case that we have a game on Thursday and we have a game on Saturday. And we're playing against 2 great opponents. And so right now we've got to focus our time and energy on that. And we've got to kind of let go of whatever that is. We can only control what we can control. And so that's probably our first message is we've got to really kind of lock into what our opponents look like, what we have to do in the next 2 games. At the same time, I think there's certainly, a desire to do really well in that for our seniors, and I think that can, be something that's really fun, but at the same time, you don't want to put pressure on those seniors. You want them to enjoy that and relax. And so the good news is we have 3 expectations: be your best, be thankful, enjoy the precious present, and now is the time to really live those out.
Don, you've mentioned throughout the season about being fortunate about having to avoid COVID for the most part, but what was it like over the weekend just having to deal with that? And it was inevitable. And do you think it was inevitable just to avoid it throughout the entire season? I know some teams have, but how fortunate do you feel avoiding COVID?
Well, I think certainly there are things that are out of your control, and I think there are things that we've tried to do to be as careful, as safe as possible. I think our players and our staff have done as much as we can in that regard, and yet still there are things that are totally out of your control too yet, and we recognize that. I think it's, we've been plugging along, and we've been really fortunate that we've had games, and now we have to figure out what what's going to happen next. And again, we're still kind of waiting to figure out what that looks like.
Tell me more about the 30 to 45 minutes of that team bonding that you mentioned. What was that like?
Yeah, it We were sitting around talking about kind of what was happening in that moment at that time. But then I think it became a kind of a storytelling time and sharing different funny things that happened. One thing led to one story, led to the next story, led to the next story, and there are some kind of neat little moments that took place at that point in time. When I think of our seniors and what they've accomplished during their careers here, it's really, really remarkable competitively. But then I think of at the same time, man, this senior class is going to have more stories than probably anybody else out there, because their last 3 years have been impacted in a way you could have never imagined that it was going to be impacted. And so the stories that they're going to have, whether it's sitting in the room at the Hampton Inn, trying to figure out, are we playing? Are we not playing? Should I go get ready for the game? Should I tell my parents to stop driving? Should I tell my parents to keep coming? What should I do at this point in time? But one thing you should do is tell your parents not to put anything out there publicly, because we don't know. So tell them to pull off the road, but don't tweet anything, don't text anyone. So there'll be moments like that. There are moments at the NCAA tournament last year. How crazy was that type of situation? I mean, when they go look back and they look at pictures of being in face masks and the face shields on the airplanes and traveling. And I mean, there's the stories that they're going to have are going to be absolutely remarkable. So I'm actually excited about whenever that time comes in 10, 15, 20 years when we get back together, and we'll enjoy some kind of good laughs about all the things that this group has been through.
Who's the best storyteller on the team?
Oh, that kind of varies. I think it all depends on the day. It all depends on the moment. We've got some very lively young ladies, and so there's a lot of fun with this crew.
Which players make you laugh the most then?
Oh, now see, that's kind of tough too, because I think there's a group of the youngsters that they think they're trying to be funny about all of it and make little jokes of it, and then the older kids kind of know, kind of what things we've been through, and so they can make a joke about something else. So I think we've got some good humor in our group. I think it's been, a part of enjoying the precious present and the journey, and I think there's been a lot of fun along the way, even though there's been some turbulence, and obviously this weekend there was some turbulence with it.
How helpful has that been, just having a group of girls who can kind of enjoy the precious present through that turbulence, like you said?
Well, this is a very special group, and not just looking at wins on the court and their success, but just in terms of who they are as people, and the fact that they can face adversity and kind of smile and joke through it and have some good laughs about it and then get back to work. I think the other challenge for our group right now is, there certainly is there's that thing, what's going to happen, and how when that decision becomes resolved and we move forward, you really have to make sure that you are focusing on what we have this week, and that certainly is a challenge too. And I think this group of young ladies has the ability to kind of segment from one thing to the next, and we're going to have to do a really good job of that this week in order to compete.
Dawn, thanks. Dawn, I don't know if this game doesn't get, how badly do you want to get this game made up? Not just from the standpoint of obviously your players want to play out their full season, but if both you and SDSU were to win out and that game isn't played, then they would win the regular season conference title on percentage points. And I don't think that's really a way anybody wanted to see that decided.
Well, I think there are ramifications in a couple of different scenarios, and one is certainly an opportunity to play for a conference championship. But again, we've got to take care of business this week, and we've got to be able to play to the best of our ability. And so that's certainly a major ramification, and I think seeding is a major ramification. And net at this point in time is affected by it as well. And so lots of ramifications in that game not being played, or and then ramifications if the game is made up. Now you're playing during the week of the Summit League tournament, which is a really important week of your season as any program, but certainly as a mid-major program. So definitely major ramifications.
Speaking of the Summit League tournament, I know obviously you're still focused on this week, but when you get back to Sioux Falls here in another week, it's going to be the first time you've been in that building on that floor since you won the title there, and obviously the world was in a much different place. Have you kind of what do you think that's going to be like being back there? Do you think there's going to be a moment where it kind of hits you how much has happened since the last time you were on that floor?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really haven't thought about that yet, Zach, and in terms of what that experience is going to be like at the Denny. At this point in time, you're right. We're kind of really focused on what we need to do this week from a regular season standpoint, and then hopefully position ourselves from a conference, seeding standpoint before we even get to that. But that is a good point, something to think about before we get to that stage. But let's wait until next week, and then we can have that discussion. How about that? Fair?
Yeah, I guess a little bit fair.
Okay,
I was just going to say though, when you look back on it, just is there anything you look back on and say, wow, just kind of look back and reflect on that whole 24, 48 hour period after winning that title game? What kind of stands out now in your mind 2 years later?
Well, things have obviously completely flipped and changed, and you look back and I think that probably the lesson you take away from it is, you really do have to enjoy the moment. You really have to be in the moment and take it in as well as you can, because, certainly when you look back at that March 10th of 2020 and the opportunity that we had and the people that we were with, and then all of a sudden March 12th occurs and everything is shut down, how the world changed in 2 days totally. And so you look back at it and you say, man, I hope that we had an opportunity to really take that moment in and relish that moment and enjoy that, because even now you look at how things have, all the protocols have changed, and life is quite a bit different. And, it's just, we're currently not coaching in masks. That was certainly different, but you're having conversations with officials who are still in masks. I mean, it's just so different than it was before. It's just, people are still spread out. They're away from each other. It's a different situation than it's been. And yet, we certainly we're doing this to hopefully have our young ladies have an incredible experience, and have something that they take away and they remember, and so we want to make that a memory that is something that they are very, that brings back good memories, but that they certainly enjoy, and that's something that, they can look back upon and say, hey, here's something we really, learned during that time of our career.
Coach?
Did you have another one? Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Obviously, Chloe and Hannah entering their final home games, Coyotes. Obviously, I don't know how much you think about legacy, but in terms of your own legacy, how much do those 3 players have an impact on it?
Well, I would kind of lump them into all 4, including Reagan, in that regard, in the respect that you have Chloe, Liv, Hannah, and Reagan Sankey that have all been a part of doing some very special things in our program. And they're young ladies who, from a competitive standpoint, have been a part of, our first ever top 25 wins, our first ever top 25 ranking, and opportunity to be conference regular season champions and do some things that haven't been done before in the conference, and then go ahead and they've been conference tournament champions, and they've been in the postseason. And, I think what they have done in terms of a competitive situation and how they've elevated our program is really kind of second to none. I mean, it's now the foundation was laid for them, and that was incredible, but they've kind of taken it and they've continued to grow it. So I think competitively they've done some really special things. But then you look at individual development of each player, and that's been really fun to watch on the court, off the court. They've had some great leaders that they've learned from, and then they've taken it and they've put their own fingerprint on it and what their leadership styles look like. And I think that's been something behind the scenes that as a coach, as their coach, has been really something that we're really proud of them for, and how they've continued to grow and make it their own. Not that they're going to do what other people have done, they're going to take their own and put their own little stamp on it too. And then you look at who they are as role models for little girls in this community, and how neat that has been and how that has grown for us and for our program. And I think you look at, their last piece is kind of in their legacy is how they've dealt with the adversity that they've been dealt during their last 3 seasons, and and before that as well too, and how they've continued to kind of grow and develop, but certainly with things that have never happened before, and let's pray they never happen again, but how have they kind of really managed to lead through all of that. And so I think there's more than just they've won an awful lot of games and they've set a lot of records since they've been here. They have really elevated our program in so many ways that it's going to be very emotional to say goodbye to them. It's going to be really hard to say goodbye to them. But at the same time, we're going to save a little bit of that emotion until the end of the year is really here. And this weekend, we're going to celebrate the fun that they've brought to this program, the energy that they've brought, and the positive parts of who they are and what they've brought forward for us.
For them to be a part of the first recruiting class that you brought in, I guess, like how that changed the mold of players that you bring into the program in future years?
Well, I think what they did is they certainly took a chance on a new coaching staff and a new style of play, and certainly said, okay, we want to be a part of this, and we want to be a part of the University of South Dakota, and continue to kind of grow the program if they're able to do that, and they have been able to do that. And so I think it is kind of neat. They've had a hand in recruiting all the other young ladies that are in our program at this point in time, and certainly that's been a great ride to be a part of and a lot of fun to be a part of. And so I think their personalities are very, very different, all 4 of them, but they blend together incredibly well.
In what ways have it ended recruiting other players?
Well, they've actually spent time with those players, whether they were the student hosts when they were on campus, or, now, they can speak to different kids, different groups of kids, whether we're recruiting kids from, the state of Nebraska, and Reagan can share her experiences, or we're recruiting kids from Minnesota or South Dakota, or, I think they each can kind of connect, or we're recruiting, a player that's similar to them in terms of their position, or maybe somebody who's really interested in the same thing academically as they are. So they've taken different roles with different recruits of ours.